Yeah.
Can I go home early? No.
Who was the shittiest boss you ever had?
Oh, we can definitely talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's part of the topic.
Because he ended up becoming a really good friend and mentor.
Oh, yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Who's that?
What?
Who's that?
Casey.
I'm not allowed to talk about that person.
So why is he a mentor if he's a terrible boss?
So okay, I'll start at the top. I transferred down to Arizona. Here. Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're good. We're rolling on everything.
So I had a boss that I worked for that was awful when I started for him.
Mm-hmm.
I had just transferred to Arizona. I was going to school down there, and I was working for Skechers at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, he had inherited a really bad situation. So he was made store manager over a location that the store manager previously hadn't really taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked into the situation thinking he was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was also told by him and basically everybody else that they were the only store that would take me because nobody wanted me when I transferred down there. So immediately, him and I start on a bad foot of, well, if you don't want me, why am I here?
Yeah.
He was very demanding and very particular and kind of a mess.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that stemmed from this really bad situation that he walked into, and he's being graded based on this bad situation he walked into.
Yeah.
And so him and I just didn't jive. And it took about 3 months working alongside him for him to finally, I remember it vividly. It was shipment day. We had just got a huge order in.
Mm-hmm.
When he inherited the store, they had 6 months of shipment just stacked in the back. They hadn't unpacked. So we had gone through a bunch of that, but now we just got this huge shipment because we finally knew what our inventory numbers were and got the clearance out and all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes in about an hour into shipment. I had come in and opened, and then he came in about an hour after we had started and explodes.
Well, yeah.
Ranting and raving, wondering why we're not making it, why we haven't made any more progress, just pissed off to the nth degree. And if any of you know me, I am equally as explosive. So I don't respond well when it's immediate, crucify JD.
Mm-hmm.
And so I let him know what I thought. And we were screaming and yelling at each other in this back hallway. We weren't out in the store. It was him and me. And we're screaming and yelling at each other because the guy that he had put on shipment hadn't shown up, and he had some personal stuff going on that he ended up losing the job, but that was his second-hand guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we were screaming and yelling at each other. And then there was this moment where both of us realized, we're pissed off, yelling at each other, and both of us realized we're saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We are just coming at it from two different approaches.
Mm-hmm.
He's a logistics guy. He had been forever. So he was just wanting to do it the logistic way, and I'm doing it the way that makes sense of it for the industry we're working in. Of that's stupid. Don't do that. Do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't hearing what I was saying as far as why I had the approach I had.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally after this huge blow up, I threw, so kids' shoes come in what's called an in size. So that's baby shoes,
Mm-hmm.
but the hard bottom ones. I threw it so hard in the middle of this conversation, I actually stuck it into the wall because I was so pissed at this dude. So I stuck a baby shoe into the back hallway. But after that explosion,
Mm-hmm.
him and I understood each other.
Little rupture and repair situation here, huh?
It was. And then from that point forward, him and I worked together incredibly well. So much so that he's still, like I said, he's been a mentor and a really good friend of we still talk. I haven't worked there in over 10 years and we still talk. He, about what's going on and those kind of things, but we just finally hit this moment where it was like, oh, we both want the same thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sorry.
And so it was just each of us coming from how we wanted to lead, but him being the top level guy and not willing to hear he'd only been a store manager for about 9 months. And I had been doing it for about 2 years at this point, as far as assistant management. And I had trained under a dude who ran about a $4 million store. So he ran a really tight ship. And it was kind of one of those things of like, we're accomplishing the same goal. We're just saving time doing it my way. And then we'll do it the way you want on the floor. But to fill the floor and then have to go through and price doesn't make sense because then I have to search out all the shoes. And like, it was a minor thing, but it was this huge explosion. And so I learned a lot from that of, what type of leader do you want to be? And one of the things I learned is sometimes you need to listen to the people under you because they figured out a way to do it smarter. In something that what we were doing doesn't change the fabric of how everything was being ran. We were just saving an extra step. Because previously it was like, you unload the shipment, you put it on the shelf, and then you go through and price everything. But I was like, unload the shipment, stack it into stacks so we know what we have, price it, and then take it to the floor. And then what's left over goes into the racks in the back for backstock. So I was just taking out the hunt and search step. But it just wasn't clicking because we weren't hearing each other of like why we were here. So the big thing that, this being a better leader is being willing to listen and understand that like sometimes the person that you're working alongside who, similar level of experience, I just wasn't the top guy, actually like they've built efficiencies that work incredibly well if you give it a chance to work. And he had to see it in action and went, yeah, this is better.
Yeah.
So he let me test it. He goes, fine, I'll let you do it your way this time. But if it doesn't work, we're going back to the old way. I said, that's fine. And it was better. We were done with shipment in about half the time of what was normal for them. And he was just like, oh. I was like, that's why I do it that way. It has nothing to do with not wanting to do it your way. It has everything to do with this is faster.
So are you saying that universal sales skills that we've already talked about on this podcast are similar to universal leadership sales or skills, as in you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth for a reason. Use them in proportion.
I'm not good at the mouth part.
Rupture and repair, buddy.
Yep, that's what it was.
That's a good story. I don't have a lot of questions.
Don't have to have a lot of questions.
Was that part of the? We're gonna plug that in. We're gonna put that at the beginning. All right.
That was a quick personal anecdote. Ooh, not quick though.
All right, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Into the Lion's Den with your co-hosts JD Stevens and Christian Griffith. Brought to you proudly by Pride Roofing and Construction and Level Creative Studios.
No nicknames this week, huh?
Yeah, I'm feeling nice. I feel like if you have a nickname, I feel like you're part of the cool crowd if you have a nickname. That's the way it's always been. It's like the coach gives you even if it's a crappy nickname, like Squirt, right? Like the coach likes you if he gives you a nickname. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
I freaking, that one is 100% true of every time I've gotten a nickname, I've always wondered where they come from because I've never had one that made sense in my brain. Like, I have no idea where you got Diesel from.
Well, JD, right? There's a D. And you're burly like a huge diesel truck, right? You got power, come with motivation and some steam. You work better in the winter than, these 4-cylinder gas-powered front-wheel drive vehicles. You know what I mean?
I do know.
Just a Ford.
What? Built tough. That's a good one. Diesel. We should have given that one to Billy, though.
I mean, I like the gas.
Billy the Gas. Love you, Billy. Billy put diesel into, or did he put gas into a diesel?
Gas into a diesel.
Gas
That's
into
why
a
he's
diesel.
the gas.
Yeah, he's the gas, but yeah, we love you, buddy. The truck that you destroyed doesn't love you, but makes a good marketing thing in the parking lot. So, anyways, today, obviously, you guys heard from the cold open. Today, what we're talking about is becoming the boss that you want to work for. Right, so putting ourselves in the shoes of the people that we're leading, trying to emulate the things that they need and want from their employer or the leader of their division within this employment scenario, and I guess just learning from a different perspective. Now, we've touched on a lot of these topics in different conversations, so we're going to kind of summarize it or not summarize it, but we're going to bring it back in. To kind of an individual topic, but becoming a leader that you'd actually want to work for is I don't think that it's thought about enough, frankly. Most managers, leaders, coaches, they know what position that they hold. They understand that there's authority, there's a lot of responsibility. With the added responsibility and weight on their shoulders, sometimes they start to get a little nearsighted. I've fallen into this pretty regularly. But honestly, if you ever want to become a good leader or coach or whatever, just somebody that's leading a charge somewhere, you have to understand that you can't just force people to work for you. You have to get people to the point where they want to work for you.
What?
No
way.
The premise is very similar, right? We just talked about the universal nature of sales and how that can be applied elsewhere. I mean, that's an entire book. It's probably the smartest and easiest read that, tune in, listeners. Actually, buy this book. Little Bit Red Book of Sales is probably the best sales book that you could ever read. But the premise of that book is, I guess the statement should be made: people don't want to be sold, but they do want to buy, right?
I like buying things.
So how do you flip that script? And in your leadership, endeavors, how do you flip that script and not have to sell your team to work for you, but get them to want to work for you? Right. So, where do we want to start with this?
Well, who would be, or what type of leader would you choose to work for?
Well, now this might just be me individually, I guess, but I think that in my career, in any leadership role that I've ever held, it seems to hold true that a leader who leads by example, somebody who doesn't just tell you how to do the job, shows you how to do the job, somebody who's willing to get into the dirt with you, whatever the case may be, and somebody who's willing to get their hands dirty so that they can help you through the process. It creates a different scenario when somebody's willing to be in the trenches with you, because you understand that you're not working for somebody any longer. You're working with somebody, and this person cares that we achieve our goal, right? It's a whole different kind of a subconscious switch that goes off when you're working with somebody. And I can, I've brought up one of my mentors a million times, but Nolan was the best. He's definitely the best leader in a lot of senses. I mean, he wasn't always around, but when I got to work with him hand in hand, I wanted to be next to him. I wanted to do the extra work. I wanted to stay late. I wanted to come early. I wanted to absorb everything that he had for me, right? I knew I was getting paid, but I was more than willing to double time it if I needed to, just so I could be around him, right? And a lot of that had to do with that, being in the trenches. There was never a point where he wasn't willing to do even the most simplest of jobs, and I took that and I carried that with me forever, right? I got one of my very first promotions working for Actually, not one of my very first, but a pretty significant promotion within that business to a regional manager, because one of my bosses, one of the owners of the gym, walked in and saw me on my back underneath of a what was it, a water fountain, and I was fixing a leaking water fountain, right? Other managers would have called in somebody to come and fix it. They would have utilized resources to get it done. And I had a couple extra minutes and I had a toolbox. Why wouldn't I stick myself underneath there and fix the problem so it didn't exist anymore? And he saw me laying on my back during prime time. All my team members were where they're supposed to be. And he's like, "You're the type of person that I want to lead within this organization on a higher scale." He gave me a promotion that day. Right? And I absorbed 3 other gyms that day. Right? But that's just something that I learned, right? I learned it from watching good leaders in front of me. Right?
I'm very similar in that I love to work under people who are willing to. I've always used the phrase "be in the trenches." Of like, I've always heard that, and it held a lot of meaning to me when I saw it applied. Of I worked under a number of managers who wouldn't. They would tell you to do things, but there's no way they would do them. And it just makes you resentful of like, you don't understand why you're frustrated with that person, but it's like, it doesn't seem like they ever do anything. I also learned an important lesson from those of like making sure that some of those managers of making sure that the people who work under you are kept busy. Because they'll be more satisfied when they leave than when they stand around. So there's lessons to be learned from both sides, but I've always been a work alongside my team type person. And I always liked working alongside those people. And I didn't realize how important it was until I had a moment with a manager, or we were closing the store one night. And so we, standard chores for the end of the night. And I took the bathrooms one night. Didn't even think about it. I was just like, I got bathrooms. And I went and did them. Cleaned them, did the whole deal, and came out. And 2 of the senior guys on staff were just like, "You're the first manager who's ever cleaned the bathroom." And it was like the one chore that everyone hated, which I didn't get. It's like, sweep and mop the floor. It takes 3 minutes. But I was the first one to ever take that particular chore so that they could do some of the other chores that they liked more. And I didn't do it all the time, but I did do it occasionally. And it garnered a lot of respect from the guys that worked under me, because when I'd say things like, "I won't ask you guys to do something that I want to do."
It shows a lot to the team, right? I can kind of spin on that conversation a little bit. We've talked about this on here. I'm a devout Christian, right? And there's a lot of teachings within the Bible when in relation to Jesus, right, where you're called to be a servant leader, right? A servant leader is a lot different than a dictatorial leader, right?
Absolutely.
Servant leader is that somebody that's there to serve the people around them. And I think that if you can take yourself out of, that weighty responsibility and that authoritative thing, right, where everybody's constantly thinking they've got to perform and they've got to force their team to perform so they don't lose their position, and you say, my job is not to serve. Your job is obviously to serve the organization, right? But I think that's a byproduct. If you're a good leader, your job is to serve your personnel and ensure that everybody rises with you, right? And whatever case that may be, it could be you take an extra shift because somebody needs to go home and be with their sick wife, right? It could be, you show up early so that you can, get a head start on things and have hot coffee prepared for your team so that when they walk in, everybody's energized and it's a different, less weighty environment walking into a Monday morning or whatever the case may be, right? But it takes some sacrifice, right? It takes some sacrifice of your own time. But you don't have to do it all the time, right? The thing about this and what we're talking about is if you are willing to go into the trenches, you're willing to serve the people around you and make it your mission to help them grow within their position, they're going to start doing those extra things without asking, right? They're going to want to reciprocate. That law of reciprocity comes right back into this conversation because they're going to be like, dude, this guy will go to the end of the earth for me. I want to do the same, right? It's like Christmas just passed, right? I feel very uncomfortable when people give me gifts if I don't have something to give them in return, right? That's just a personal thing, but most people feel that way, right? You get a gift from somebody and it's really thoughtful and it's personality driven and you know they not only spent their resources but they spent time thinking about you and they care about you. It's like I want to do the same thing for you, right? And if I didn't, I really missed the mark. So I'm going to go do it right now because you just dropped this thing on my desk, or whatever. But it's I think that's an important piece to put on here is that servant mentality. It's not that you're there to drive people. You're there to drive. But it's just like we talked about with physical strength and with aesthetics and whatever, right? It's like aesthetics are a byproduct of hard work, right? A cohesive team and people willing to actually work for you is a byproduct of how well you've served them, right? So
the other thing you see from those teams and what I experienced when I was working alongside teams like that was the teams got better. And I had, specifically with the time at like Skechers, we always try to promote internally, but I had a lot of guys that went to other stores and ended up being like assistant store managers and things like that. A guy I actually hired ended up being the store manager that I later on came to work under, just due to, circumstances. But we, and the manager I was working under at that time, because of what we drove and the way we pushed, we got the work done. But when we got the work done, we didn't just find silly things to do either.
Mm-hmm.
We were willing to enjoy the times when you could. So we're caught up. We're not behind. There might be a couple of small things that need done, but let's take 30 minutes and have lunch or hang out and have a conversation, get to know our people.
Mm-hmm.
And we were afforded a lot of luxury to be able to do things like that. But it's because our team worked so hard consistently that it was easy to be on top of it because we worked right alongside them. And we could get through projects way faster because everyone was involved. There was nobody that wasn't involved. You don't get to just stand at the register.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody come on up. We want everyone to be able to do this. And because of that, we built amazing teams. And it was fun to work alongside us.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side of that coin is the balancing force.
Mm-hmm.
I was really lucky to work under a person who helped balance out my tendency to be a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a young manager at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I drove an entire staff away
Mm-hmm.
that way. I'm not proud of that. It's a huge disappointment when you're that person
Mm-hmm.
and you drive it away a really amazing group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So learning who you want to work under and not losing sight of that
Right.
is a huge thing to take away from this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and to kind of spin another direction too, when I say that, managers or leaders or coaches should be somebody who has a servant mentality and somebody who's willing to get into the trenches and those types of things, that's not the only characteristic, right?
No.
People thrive in structure, right? And we've had this conversation very recently on the podcast too, which is like, if you're not providing a foundation and you're not giving a clear expectation of what happens when things get derailed, it causes a lot of chaos within people's lives while they're at work, right? So you do have to bring a hammer every once in a while, right? You have to have the gall, the wherewithal, the nuts, whatever you want to call it, to call something for what it is. But it's not for just the sake of calling it for what it is. It's always looking at it through a lens of how can we actually grow together in this scenario? How can I not let you fall off the map and miss your mark, miss your potential, And how do I get you to think from that same perspective as I do it, right? You're doing people a disservice when you don't bring a hammer in certain scenarios, right? Some things have to be corrected, right? Ask any parent, right? You let your kids just kind of get away with the little nuances and little things all the time, it'll grow into bigger things, right? And so it'll come as a very big surprise if you do explode, you do it rupture, right? Because it's misheard. Right, it's not going to be heard whatsoever. It's going to bounce straight off. It's going to go in the ears, bounce off the back of their head, and right back out those ears because it's like, wow, this is weird. Right? You have to be consistent. So it's like, I'm willing to go to the trenches with you. I'm willing to follow the same protocols. I'm willing to show you how to do the job. I'm willing to be there with you as you do the job. But if you fall off of those pieces, right, and we've clearly spent time to develop ourselves as a team, I'm going to bring you back. Right? I might bench you. Right? If you're a coach, I might bench you, right, in a very important game, and it's going to be detrimental for your entire team if you're sitting on the bench. But that's a learning lesson in and of itself, right? Sometimes people do need to be wrangled back in, right? So I don't want to make it sound like you just have to go out there and do their jobs for them and always be sacrificing your time. There's a lot of people, they joke about management, right? They're like, oh, I got a promotion today, so I'm gonna now do double the amount of work. Get paid exactly the same. Yippee-ki-yay, this is my life now, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, go out and show people how to do the job and be really nice all the time and all this stuff. It's better to be liked than it is to be respected, right? But you can work with both of those things. Or it's better to be respected than it is to be liked, right? If we had to weigh the two against each other. But you can be both of those things, and people appreciate that. They like the structure, right? So, but the other part of it is consistency, right? I think that's a huge topic or a bullet point we should use when we're talking about becoming the boss that you want to work for. I don't want chaos from my superior. I don't want to walk in. You've got to feel this, right? Now, the whole company got to feel this a while back. When I had a business partner before, because there was a lot of inconsistency. You never really knew what you were getting when you walked in that day, right?
Never. And
that in and of itself creates a problem, right? So if you're willing to work with somebody and you're willing to invest into somebody, but you're also willing to hold them accountable when they fall off of this paired, relationship that you've done, that's okay. You just have to be consistent. It's not like blow up one day and be happy-go-lucky the next day. It's every day is the same. Consistency is important. It's important in rearing children. It's important in rearing your employees. Sounded funny, rearing your employees, but bringing them up.
And that's the part that I'm still developing is the consistency because, and this comes from a multitude of places, as any manager will tell you of. Sometimes we get into these I don't have people to backfill the positions or, any of these things. And that can make you wildly inconsistent. I don't want to go too deep into that. But I've been the type of manager that it's just like, oh, cool, JD's fun to work with today. And everyone's happy and we have a good time. It's super productive. And I've come in days where I'm a dickhead. Just tippy top of the chain. And those days were unproductive, and I never understood why. And it's because of the way that I was talking to people. And it's because we were behind and I was feeling pressure, but I took that out on them rather than just enforcing the standard that we had built. Of, hey, guys, we don't have time to I know that we have times when we can chat and hang out and those kind of things. Today is not one of those days. I need everyone on train, and if we get done, then there may be time for that at the end of the shift. But right now, I need everyone here. But that's not what I would say. It would be, why the fuck are you sitting there? What are you doing? Get off your phone, go do this right now. And then they'd be like, dude, I just stopped for 30 seconds. And that could have been the case. But it was just such an immediate, scream yell of at any slight on those days that's not structure. It's like you said, the consistency of this is what we're driving you towards.
I think it's a good analogy is like a farm, right? I'm taking you let's go way out into the weeds for a second, but a farm, right? So you got a farm. There's a huge plot of land, and you have a lot of freedom inside that plot of land, right? You can grow in this area, have your horses corralled in this area. You could do all kinds of stuff. And as kids or people on the farm, like you have a lot of freedom to work your day however you want to. However, there's the confines of the electric fence, right? You get too close to it, you know to slow down. You get all the way to it, it's going to shock you, right? But when it shocks you, you knew that it was a clearly defined boundary, right? I think that's the thing that I was trying to get out in the last statement that I made is like, if you have clearly defined the boundaries and you give freedom for growth and happiness and whatever professional development it is, depending on what leadership role that you're in, but you have those boundaries don't expand, they don't contract, they're the same every single day. People know how close they can get, and they know what to avoid, and that's important.
And they have to be the same, because this is the other trap that a lot of management fall into. The confines are this big for person A, but they're this big for person B.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be the same,
Mm-hmm.
because that will create of like, well, that person does this and this and this, and like they're really important to the team, and you know they've earned. This is a thing that you'll hear a lot of managers say of like they've earned that, and it's just like, no, you're just giving them a pass because of X, Y, or B, and sometimes it's period ended. They're your buddy,
Yep.
and you like talking with them, and that is the worst kind of boundary enlargement.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are things that are earned
Mm-hmm.
from other parts of from other members of the team, but those have to be well defined
Mm-hmm.
so that other people can earn them.
Yeah, I think like we had that discussion with Dan on here when it came to sales, and salespeople are the worst when it comes to this. High-performing salespeople, like sometimes they're their worst enemy, or they become the worst enemy of the organization. So on one side they are providing an incredible amount of value, on the other side they're providing an incredible amount of chaos. And it's like a scale is being weighed. Which one's more important to the organization right now? So, and usually the value that they're adding when it comes to production or performance or whatever outweighs the other one, right? Usually that's what happens, and then they start to feel entitled to do that same thing, right? It has to be something very clear. If you want to give a some leeway to certain things with your employees, let it be with how they perform their day, the freedoms that they have within their day, right? But not the process.
Correct.
Right? Not the protocol, not the standard, not the process. You never want to decay your foundations that you've built for the sake of appeasing a high performer, because not only are they going going to go into their brain, just cause negative, feedback. It's going to get dark in there a little bit, but that's going to cause darkness for everybody else at the same time, right? They want that structure, but you can give leeway, and you can give some entitlement. You can give those things because it's been earned and it's been shown that this person has been awarded this because of their value, right? This is what they bring to the table. This is how much we support them. But if you start changing the basics, that's going to decay them. It's going to decay their team members, and then it unfortunately decays you as a manager, right? Nobody wants to trust you anymore. Nobody wants to go to you. Nobody wants to ask questions because all they're thinking about are all the resentments that they're building, right? They start to, we talk about this a lot when it comes to like our clients and stuff. It's like if you leave too much dead air with your client, so you're working towards a sale or you have a sale, but your job's not going to be built for a month, and you just decide, I don't want to follow up with them. A month is a lot of time for people to stew on thoughts, right? And then the perception that they create within their mind is your reality as a salesperson, right? So never leave too much dead space, but that's exactly what happens with your team members internally, right? You leave dead space because you're giving this guy the special treatment, and this guy you're always holding to the flame, right? There might be a reason behind that, right? But if you're not clearly defining where the boundaries are and which things are okay and which things have been earned, you're just shooting yourself in the ass.
It just makes your life hard because there's no understanding, like they said, of he still does all the paperwork, and he still, your processes, he still does all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just his day has a lot more flexibility of like, he's built a network of like sales guys of like guys that sell on the golf course. Because there's a lot of business deals that happen on the golf course. Not every salesperson is that person.
Right.
People work years to become that type of salesperson by building networks and connections and all of those kind of things. So, you know, you'll hear that complaint from a newer salesperson like, well, all he does is play golf all day. He also generates what he generates.
That's part of that entitlement that I was talking about. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll pay for your professional golf lessons. That can be a bonus of yours. I'll pay for your tea times with your 3 clients that you are wining and dining. I'll pay for your after, you know, I guess I don't play enough golf, but your round of golf, I'll pay for your food and your drinks afterwards as well. That can be part of what you're doing. That's leeway, right? But when it gets to the nitty gritty and they still have to perform, they put their results in, right? Their results wane because you've given too much freedom. We talk about it, right? And then when they put these jobs in and they don't have the right data in the right places, and they're like, nah, you guys can figure it out. No, that's not the
We're
leeway.
done.
That's not the leeway we're going to give you.
We're not doing
We are
this
going to
anymore.
support you and make your life as easy as we can make it because you're accelerating and the value you're bringing is helping the organization. But when you start to cut corners with things that other people are being held to a different standard for, we created a huge problem, right?
And I think that's an easy trap to fall into of, you know, you don't realize you've done it until, like you said, all of a sudden something gets turned in that's super duper sloppy. And you're just like, shoot, where did I mess up? Because that's the other part of leadership. Leaders should spend more time looking in the mirror. Because you should be judging, if you're judging their performance, you also need to be judging yours.
Right.
Because a lot of problems inside of organizations can ultimately be routed back to a manager.
Yeah, well,
in my experience.
It's always going to be, right? It's trickle-down management, funnel-up accountability. These people are a reflection of you and your management, right? And so, like, if there's incredibly low performers, you need to ask yourself, have I given them the resources? Have I given them the time? Have I dedicated what I need to make them, you know, have them, A, understand what they're supposed to be doing, and B, actually excelling at what they're doing? If you can firmly say, right, I did both of those things, then the next step is, have I created those boundaries? Have I had the hard conversations? And you can say that I did. Then you need to make action. You need to cut them from your team, right? They're just not the right person, right? So fill somebody back in. But if you just let them hang out for the sake of hanging out, and then you're pissed because the whole team's not performing, you set that course in motion. That's the domino you tipped over. Right? You have to have a lot of accountability as a manager or a leader. You get to determine if we're going to make our course or not.
And you have to own it, because it's real easy to be like, well, they're not doing anything. No.
They're your guy.
They're your guy. They are your responsibility. You are accountable for their actions as much as they are accountable for their actions.
Right.
Now, if you have done those things, because I've seen this one of like, you have a guy that's performing low, but he hasn't been given any focus. And then that manager's mad, and they're like, I just want to get rid of him. Why? Well, he's not doing anything. Have you done this? No. Have you done this? No. Well, then it's your fault he's failing. I need you to understand that without any shadow of a doubt, you're the problem. Right now, you are the problem. Now, if you spend that time and you do those things you're talking about of like allowing him to succeed and he still doesn't get it, that's a completely different conversation. But you haven't done your part.
You've got to look in the mirror and you've got to self-reflect. Every time your team, if you want to be the boss that people want to work for, you have to look at problems first introspectively. You have to look at them like, I created this problem. And then if you have crossed every single one of those things off and you haven't created that problem, then set that boundary, make the action that you're supposed to. That If you haven't done those things, you don't have any right disciplining them. You don't have any right pulling them from the team. You should be pulled from the team. You should be demoted. You should be taken away from that leadership position because you failed that person. They didn't fail you, right? So,
And then I think that's the really important part of looking in the mirror and being self-aware of knowing that that is the thing you have to do. And there's lots of ways that you can get the accountability back to yourself. If beyond just looking in the mirror, journaling can be really powerful. I'm not a journaler, but I know a lot of people that use it and utilize it powerfully. And it helps them process out the things that they've gone through, or put the thoughts down so that they're not carried as frustrations, so that they can better, manage their teams. But the other thing you can do is ask your team to review you, but no, there's a chance your feelings are going to get hurt.
Yeah, we're doing this right now. I'm just excited to see how many feelings I have left in my body. But yeah, no, it's important to have people review you. It's important to ask questions. It's important to get vulnerable, which is another one of these bullet points on the good suggestion. But anyway, so we talked about it's a common misconception with managers, leaders, coaches. It's a very common misconception that you need to have all of the answers. That's one of the biggest missing pieces. And the other part is they feel the weight of the authority and responsibility, and they no longer want to become vulnerable. They don't want to say things like, I don't know, right? Because then they're perceived, they think anyways, they're going to be perceived as an incompetent leader. But those are the human sides of things that allow people to want to actually work with you and grow with you, right? So I think we can dive into that a little bit more. But the leaders don't have to have all the answers, right? But they have to be willing to work for the answers and work for the people who need the answers.
One of the most powerful things that I was taught by a leader that I worked under that I really respect, Greg, he was one of the people that JD, you never say you don't know. Do you realize that? Mm-hmm. Even if you don't, you never say it. Mm-hmm. Just say, I don't know, but I can get that answer for you. Mm-hmm. And then get the answer. He goes, because you're really good at finding the answers. Mm-hmm. People just want to hear the first part. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you follow it up with I think it's this, but you don't know. So just say that. I don't know, but I can get that answer. Mm-hmm. Give me a few minutes or whatever it is going to be. And, exactly what you're talking about of you don't have to have every answer. Mm-hmm. That's why you have in big teams, you have things like HR and IT and things like that, because it's crazy to think that one person would be an expert on all of the things.
Mm-hmm. But if they pretend to be, now what's that do? From your perspective, what does that do to the team?
Well, I mean, we experienced it firsthand. We had somebody who knew everything about everything and multiple times. And I've seen it in other places, and all it does is I don't want to ask that guy a fucking thing. Because half the time it's fucking wrong, and then I'm in trouble.
Well, yeah, but what it does, so a drop of poison can ruin the entire tank, right? It can ruin the entire water supply, right? Because it spreads. So somebody who makes up an answer, right, and if they get found out for what they just did, every time they say something from that point forward, it's going to be assumed that this is either wrong, it's a lie, it's bullshit, it's whatever, right? Even if it's 100% accurate, even if they really are experienced with that, they're questioned from that point forward forever. And team members don't keep quiet. They never keep quiet. We always make a joke that I wonder what the meeting after the meeting is going to be like today, right? Everybody talks. When they're in, relatively same or identical title positions, they're on a team. Even if they don't like each other, they still spitball with each other, and they say the things that piss them off. They say the things that they don't like about that person or the organization. And it's like, why would you put yourself in a position to have everything you ever say for the rest of your time with this person questioned or disregarded? Just say, I don't know. and then prove to them that you're a servant leader by finding the answer and growing with them. It's a really simple thing, right? We talk about it on these podcasts all the time, like, but they're such general concepts. Like if the world just could understand something simple, which is honesty is refreshing, and people like normal people, you can do a lot of business understanding that if you present that forward, right? You can do a lot of business and you can be a great manager. You can be a great person in general. If you're just the same person every single day and you're genuine and honest as you do it, right? You're hiding things from people, you're going to get found out. You're lying about things, you're going to get found out. You're making stupid judgment calls and blaming it on somebody else, you're going to get found out, right? So why not just get rid of the tangled web of bullshit and just be a normal fucking person?
I don't disagree with what you're saying because everything always comes out. Mm-hmm. It's a rule of thumb. I don't care what you want to believe. Mm-hmm. If you lie to a team member one time mm-hmm. about something stupid especially, mm-hmm. you're going to mess up and not repeat that lie to a different team member.
Shakespeare, man. And, what a tangled web.
Yeah. And you can't keep it straight. Eventually, it all comes down around your ears. And beyond the reputation damage with that one person of like, now that person's really has a hard time working on your team and wants to, if capable, transfer away from working for you or quit working for your company, because we are talking to entrepreneurs also. Mm-hmm. People will leave mm-hmm. if they don't want to deal with being lied to. People don't want to be lied to.
Well, there is a common saying, and I'm surprised we haven't said it yet, but people don't quit businesses. They quit managers, right? They quit managers, and it's because of mistakes like this, right? In inability to become vulnerable, saying things like, I don't know, or saying things like, let's work on this together because this is a shortcoming of mine and I'd like to grow in it and I want you to grow with me, right? Like you avoid those little things by exposing that you're normal, right? You are going to lose that person for forever. They're quitting the business. They might quit the business in their mind, but what stemmed the negativity was you as their manager making that error, right? And so, yeah, I think it's a really important topic for people to actually spend some time self-reflecting on, right? Are you setting clear boundaries for your team members? Are you giving the ability to have freedom within that and let people grow within those boundaries? Are you acknowledging things when they fall out of it? And are you actually responding with some decency, right? Some vulnerability when people ask you a question you don't have the answer to, right? Are you showing that servant leadership every time that you're with those people? And if you're not and you're wishy-washy, every day is something different, don't be a manager. Don't be a coach. You're screwing people over.
Well, in talking with criticism, because that's where this stemmed from, mm-hmm. the other part of criticism is being able to take it with grace. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not constructive. Mm-hmm. You'll get reviews and people will just be like, yeah, that guy's a dick. Yeah. They won't expound on it. They won't nothing. Or, I just don't like working for him because he yells at me when I'm late. Sometimes it's dumb.
He makes me do my job.
Correct. Sometimes it's dumb. And
what
you're just
an
like,
asshole.
Whatever. But sometimes there's comments in there that you'll just be like, whoa.
Yeah.
And you'll want to go talk to that person and like, don't do this if you know who it is and it's an anonymous review because you're a dick if you do. I lost a job doing an anonymous opportunity for a position because of an anonymous review.
Yeah.
Anonymous.
You knew who it was. Yeah.
No, they knew that I was the one that wrote the review, and I was honest, and I was rough mm-hmm. in my honesty. Yeah. And my position was not extended to me the next year.
Yeah. Wow.
So don't do that. If you ask people for reviews, even if it doesn't feel constructive to you, mm-hmm. you asked for the feedback. So take the feedback gracefully mm-hmm. and realize the power of it. Some of it, let it roll off your back because mm-hmm. it's coming from a place of stupidity mm-hmm. of, yeah, I'm always going to harp on you because you were late. Mm-hmm. Like, duh. You let that stuff go. Mm-hmm. And the other part of it is if someone says something and it's, it bothers you, the worst thing you can do is like pull that, and this is the HR part of me speaking right now. The worst thing you can do is pull that person into a room by themselves and reinforce exactly what they just said.
Right.
Of
You're a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is that what that is?
yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy or you just happen to hear through the grapevine that there was a conflict with a person with you. And then you pull them aside and make it a conflict.
Well, I think that's a good piece to also play in. There's one thing, I actually failed in this a number of times in my previous, not so much recently. I've learned what to listen to and what not to listen to. But it's very important not to get your information from a tertiary source.
No.
Direct source is the only place for action to actually to become a thing.
Everyone's played the telephone game.
Right. Yeah, I remember playing the telephone game for the first time, and it was funny. There was this kid named Derek who's a troublemaker. It was like third grade. I'm not sure how I remember him so well, but he changed the words in the middle. He was like in the middle, and every time it was completely different. But it was like it started with my pony is white, and it ended with like my neighbor microwaved my chihuahua. And we were in like third grade, right? So, but anyways, it's a good analogy. But it's like secondhand information, thirdhand information is not reliable information, right? You get pissed at somebody, or you come down on somebody, or you set these boundaries with somebody off of something somebody else said. Expect problems, right?
Every time.
Yeah.
Because you also don't know the relational dynamic with the person that you're hearing it third hand from. Does this person hate the person that the information originally came from? Yeah. Or has some type of small, like, it's not reliable in any way, shape, or form. And the other thing, the worst thing you can do of, like, getting it third hand is going to the person that it originally came from and being like, did you say this? Because they're just going to be like, what the hell?
Right.
That's not at all what I said.
It came out of left field. Plus, it's pretty, remaining emotionally intelligent, that's another talking point on here, is you're never going to remain emotionally intelligent if you're a trigger happy as a manager, right? You have to avoid emotional responses. You have to think before you act, not too long, right? Because you're going to lose efficacy. But if you think long enough to present a logical and articulated conversation with this person, you can really build from a problem. But if you're emotionally attached to something, like rumors brought to you tertiary, right, from the third hand, fourth hand, whatever, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're just going to make yourself look like a buffoon. And that's how they are going to feel about you, and therefore everybody else is going to feel about you after that interaction. You've lost all credibility.
You've lost all credibility, and then the person that you potentially created a whole secondary slew of problems by not taking criticism gracefully. Because now your team has a bunch of team members they don't trust.
Yep. Look, I can tell you for certain, I love feedback. I get more from feedback. Like I can grow more out of feedback than I can from anything else, because you actually understand the micro fractures and failures you created. You actually understand the perception that you created within other people. I love walkthroughs. This is something we do as an organization. I think that the walkthrough is the most valuable step we've ever added to our process, where we go and we learn from our clients about what we did right and what we did wrong also, right? And I tell them that. I'm like, any and all feedback is absolutely appreciated. I like when I take second level escalation calls where it's like the managers can't calm this person down, and me as an owner, I have to go in and talk to this person. I'm not excited to get yelled at, but I'm very excited to find out where all the drops were in the process so that I can take that back to my team and build off of it, right? That's something that's going to allow you to grow personally, your whole business to grow. It's just going to make everything better, right? You have to be able to take feedback. You have to be able to be self-aware enough to know that you caused a lot of these problems. I mean, they say, what's that customer service saying? It's like the customer is always right. The customer is not always right.
In matters of taste and preference.
The customer is not always right, but customers will deliver you very accurate perception information, right? This is how they felt. regardless of if that's actually what happened or not. That's how they felt. How do I avoid that feeling, right? This is what happened on site, regardless of how, emotionally tied they were to it. There's something to learn in that, right? And if you're not willing to do that with your team members, you're never going to be a great manager. You have to take feedback. You have to ask for feedback. So we can spin into the conversation we just talked about, how to gauge your efficacy as a manager, right? We do quarterly reviews. We're issuing out an anonymous entire organization internal survey or internal questionnaire, right? But when you read those things, you can't read it through a lens of like, this person's a non-performer, or this person's this, or this person's that. It's like, regardless of how anonymous it is, you can read through the lines and you're like, oh man, I know who this is. But you can't take that information and go roast them for it, right? You're never going to be trusted with information from that point forward.
And a lot of times, if those are sent in a way that people feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that they can be honest,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're not going to, hit them over the head with a bat,
Mm-hmm.
they're incredibly powerful. Because I remember when we did one in the past, and we got a bunch of feedback back, and it was literally all the stuff the management was feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but coming from non-management people of like, well, this and that, and it's just like, oh, so everyone's thinking the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're feeling that like, oh, I'm struggling with a lack of structure. And that was very telling of, we were reading through these and like, sure, we're small. At that time, we were a small organization, so we knew who everyone was.
Mm-hmm.
I did, as HR, I knew who all of them were. But I didn't ever disclose that. And then a lot of the responses I rephrased to help remove, like I left their wording the same, but took out their voice,
Mm-hmm.
so that their managers didn't know who it was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
If it was like very obvious that like, oh, this is who wrote that, especially when it was criticism of like, I'm not going to change what you said. I'm just going to remove your voice from it,
Mm-hmm.
so that, nobody's frustrated by anybody, because employees being asked, or anyone being asked to give you feedback should feel safe doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there's lots of avenues you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterly reviews are great for your check-ins for every 3 months.
Well, I think I forgot a note on the quarterly reviews. I think it's important to make mention that a quarterly review of an employee is not just your review of them.
Correct.
Right? Make it a two-way street. Play ping pong, right? The ball needs to go back and forth, right? If you're reviewing their metrics and their personality and their timeliness and punctuality, right? They should still be able to make mention of everything that they're noticing about the organization and you as well. You're never going to grow with your team members if you don't let them have a voice.
Also, people tell on themselves.
Yeah.
I know that seems counterintuitive, but there may be things of like, most people are their own hardest critic.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also a point of growth for you as a manager of like, hey, you feel like you're here, but there's also like, I really feel like you're here.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing as bad as you feel like you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't beat if they're hitting their metric, and all those things of like, you're actually doing way better than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Take a breath and quit being so hard on yourself.
I'm guilty of that. I'm absolutely my biggest critic. I absolutely have a real negative perception of myself, and I fight it every single day, right? So, yeah, I'm going to grade myself worse, and I'm probably going to acknowledge some of the things you weren't even thinking while we were there, but we're going to grow from it as we do it, right? I think reviews they take up a lot of time, but they are absolutely dynamite for making sure that your vessel is pointed in the right direction as you're traveling for the next three months, right?
And they're really helpful because that's what we were talking about with not letting like the dead space that we talked about earlier in the episode. By doing them quarterly, because some people do them annually or biannually, by doing them quarterly, you're not letting resentment grow for 9 months before they potentially because it could be something silly like, you didn't say happy birthday to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know I shouldn't say that that's silly, but
Well, people notice everything, though.
Correct.
Right? Like you got 3 employees and one, leg of the business, and you said happy birthday to 2 of them and forgot the third. Right? Does that mean you like the other 2 more? Does that mean that you only appreciate the work that they put in? Does that mean that you're harboring some kind of resentment? These are all the things that are going on in the back of their head. It's the tall and the small, right? People turn mountains into molehills. You have to be aware, right? So if you're going to do something with one person, keep it the same with everybody else.
frankly, a lot of times it's just one of those deals of like, I had my head in my ass that day. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Right? Yep.
And I've said that of like, yo, I'm really sorry you feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
That's my bad. You did nothing wrong.
Right.
I just had my head in my ass.
I have my
I'm
head
real
in my
sorry
ass
about
all
it.
the time. Right?
Like, it's
Yeah.
warm and it's comfortable. I'm used to it at this point.
So, without even really following the script, we've really nailed a lot of these bullet points. Empathy is not a weakness, right? Feeling for your team, putting yourself in your team's shoes and working through that perspective is a very valuable tool, right? You don't always have to be Captain Know-It-All, Captain Rigid, whatever term you want to use there, right? People want to know that you're approachable. And they want to know, they don't want a weak leader, right? Yeah, and you're doing just as much disservice to yourself if you don't hold those boundaries very solid with people. You're doing just as much of a disservice as if you're made really confined spaces and over the top boundaries for people, right?
People don't want to be in a place where it just doesn't prompt growth. And people don't want to be in a place that they don't feel like they're getting better.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's just constant, like, well, I can do nothing because nobody's going to say anything,
Mm-hmm.
eventually most people will leave. There's going to be turds that'll stick around forever because, hey, I don't have to do shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what it is. And I can sit here on it, or scroll TikToks all day long and it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have that.
Yeah.
There's going to be people that are always looking for that out. But the people that you want on your team are going to be the people that are going to leave because they just, they want that structure. And
Yeah.
I think that's the
They
big
don't-
thing to provide.
They don't trust you. They don't respect you. They don't want to follow you, right? So you got to build trust, and that's going to happen through being vulnerable, being empathetic, creating real firm boundaries and sticking to them, consistency, right? So I think we've just basically built the perfect manager through the conversation, right? I wish I've fallen short on every one of these things in different scenarios.
Me too.
I'm sure everybody's listening has probably thought in their head, yep, did that, whoops, and here's my 10-minute long spiel about what that did for me and my team and that kind of stuff, right? I think that's what's powerful about long form podcasts and stuff like that is you can really articulate things that are going on and it's really relevant to what people have going on in their lives. But we just created a great manager. And if we can just stick to those things, we went through the 13 fatal errors and we damn near hit every single one of those as we've been talking right now. But a lot of it really falls down to self-reflection. Understand that you have authority, but that doesn't mean that you get to control everything. Right? That doesn't mean you fall with iron fist in everything. You've earned authority through the time you've spent with the organization. However, it doesn't need to be wielded like it's some kind of tool.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Mm-hmm.
Of anytime I've worked under a manager that wields their authority like a sickle, it's just going to cut you down in their path. You don't stick around.
I got one more. Well, so we talked about the lead by example, right? The servant leader and that kind of stuff. It's like, put your money where their mouth is. Don't tell people what you can do and what you've done. Continue to do it, right? He's laughing because he knows exactly who I'm talking about. But it's really important. You want to create some animosity with your team. Show them why you got that position through your actions, right? That's a Navy SEAL mantra. I can't remember exactly how they say it, but there's Navy SEALs, they know what they did in the dark. They don't need the accolades for it, right? As a manager, you don't need to go out and talk about your accolades and why you got that position. You do need to show it, though. Your actions need to provide evidence.
Eventually, if you're constantly talking about exactly what we're talking about, of like, it's constant tell but no show, everyone's just going to believe that you're high on your own supply. Like, you're just.
You ever watch the South Park when they all start buying Priuses?
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
smoke cloud.
Yeah, the smug cloud.
Good for you. Yeah. That's a manager with all tell, no show.
Yeah.
Right. So get rid of the smugness. Be a normal person. Get out there. Show people what the pace is like. Show them how successful that they can be if they just follow the script. Right. So, but anyways, you got any other key takeaways or anything else to add to this conversation? I think we did pretty good here.
I don't really have anything else.
Mhm.
I think that, we really did capture all of the different points. I was just looking again at the notes, and it was
I've read through
wow.
it like 15 times as we've been sitting here, and I'm like, oh yeah, we did that. Yep, yeah, we did that. Yep, we did that. So,
Okay.
anyways, I guess we're on the same page. Maybe we're on to something, but I think we just put it out there. Become the boss that you want to be. And we just gave you all the tools for it. So we're going to wrap this episode up. Thank you guys for tuning in to Into the Lion's Den. Thank you, JD, for bringing your beautiful gray beard.
It's only getting grayer.
And
There's your next nickname.
we would love a little bit, Captain Graybeard. I don't know. I always put Captain in front of everything I say. It's like Mr. Graybeard. Doesn't sound nearly as cool as Captain Graybeard.
Everyone wants to be a pirate, duh.
Yar. But anyways, we appreciate everything from all of our regular viewers. Please like and subscribe, engage in the content, ask some questions. We would love to tailor fit the next episode to you. Thanks, JD, for being in here, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Have a great one, guys.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you've gathered enough ammunition to go out, fight the good fight, and become a better person every single day. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content, ask us some questions. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you.